do whatever the Hyundai you want.
Hey, I'm Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
G'day, I'm Marcus Ambrose.
Hey, this is Kenny Rose, and you're listening to
The Fuel Pod.
This podcast covers all things motorsports. It's unfiltered, it's unmasked, and
Ooh, we're going crazy. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fuel Pod, episode 67, Singaporing in the rain, because I have a feeling it's going to rain. Well, so does the weather. I actually looked up the weather, and it's supposed to be like a 51% chance of rain during the race, so we'll see what happens. Redbeard, my Spanish is non-existent, if that's what that is, but I went ahead and posted it anyway. I'll need a translation, unless it's like the plural of water, which I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. But anyway, welcome back to the Fuel Pod. We're going to talk Singapore tonight. We're going to talk Indy Car Demolition Derby and some NASCAR playoffs. We're going to kick it off with Formula One, the best show on tarmac, as far as I'm concerned. So this is a night race. It's in Singapore, and that's not Singapore, Illinois, or Singapore, Oregon. That's Singapore, Asia. So if you're wanting to watch this race live, you're going to have to if you're in the Central Time Zone, you're going to have to get up at a little bit before 7 a.m. To catch this one live, because it'll be at 7. It's 8 p.m. local over there. Good news is over here, the weather's probably going to be a lot better than it actually is in Singapore. It's going to be hot and muggy. If it rains, it's even going to be even more muggy. So let's talk about Singapore. It's at night, 9,000 lights around this track. Most of the drivers have said it's like driving in a tunnel. If you've ever seen anybody or done it yourself virtually, either in F1 23 or any number of simulators, you know what I'm talking about. It feels really closed in, very narrow, super technical, although they have changed the layout. They wanted to make the racing more exciting. So this year they cut out 4 turns. And pretty much it's the 4 turns that are tacked onto the end of the race, so that it really favors some high-speed stuff coming to the end of the lap. This track, circuit, whatever you want to call it, it definitely favors high downforce cars. So, you know, if you're a Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, or Mercedes fan, you're in luck, because those cars are going to do well here. That's not to say other cars won't. I really feel like Alex Albon, even though the Williams will definitely not be built for this circuit, I really feel like he'll have a decent shot. I feel like Gasly will be, he'll fight. I don't think the Alpine's going to do that well here. We've got 2 drivers. It's going to be their first time ever on this track, and neither one have been in F1 very long, one longer than the other, but Liam Lawson is there, and Logan Sargent for Williams. The only place these 2 have ever raced this circuit is in the F1 video games, so both of them are excited. I mean, I get that, but they're young and they're rookies, and I think that and if it rains, I think that's really going to show definite high potential for a couple of early retirements, or at least mid-race retirements, but hopefully they'll surprise me. Some other pieces of trivia for this. Hamilton ran one of his best laps ever in 2018 qualifying at this circuit. So he could potentially really churn in some fast laps, and might even see a surprise in the race. And I'd like to see him up there. I think it'd be a really good capstone for him as we move towards the twilight of his career. Fernando Alonso has won this race twice, so it's important to look at that. He's always good here. I mean, he's good in most places, and if he has the right car under him, they will do well here as well. Speaking of Aston Martin, of course. That car's not built for super high downforce. It's kind of right there in the middle, so it should be interesting to see where everything shakes out for them. But looking forward to it. But let's talk about some news. surrounding this race weekend, because we need to get to that. Logan Sargent's in trouble. I don't know. What are we at? Round 16 of the F1 calendar. He's in trouble. We got 22 races, so he's got 6 left, 7 left. He's not shown the improvement that I think the press wanted to see. He's not showing the improvement that I think the fans wanted to see. I listened to his pre-conference today, pre-race conference this morning. He seems to think he's making steady improvements, and if that's his perception, then that's his perception. And I get that, but it might not be as fast as the team wants. And you look at somebody like Liam Lawson, who's come in for an injured Daniel Ricciardo, who also will not be back this weekend. You look at what Lawson has turned in, almost got points last week. The week before that, he got a P13, which it was a pretty solid P13. So, Williams has got options. And I hate that for Logan because, as an American, and Logan's the only American driving on the grid, it makes it tough. So I look forward to seeing what happens to him. And, I really hope he's able to turn it around, maybe do something miraculous here. I don't really see it happening, but here we go. But the big news this morning was Zhou Guanyu, who solidified his F1 racing seat for 2024 by signing his contract, staying with Alfa Romeo, staying with Valtteri Bottas as his teammate. I look forward to seeing what they can do. And Joe's one of those guys that I really do think he's shown improvement on the track, and he's shown knowledge and awareness in everything involving his race weekend. So I really look forward to seeing what he can do. I do have to tell a funny story about Liam Lawson. So apparently his dad, growing up, I guess, promised him, because F1 was his favorite sport, promised him he would take him to Singapore one day. Well, it never happened. Like, it's tough being a dad sometimes, but anyway, he promised he'd take him, never happened. So he's going to be in the house for his son racing the Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. So should be pretty interesting. And, it's kind of a cool story. I don't think Liam's going to finish this race, and I'm sorry, man. I hate to be that guy. I guess I'll just be the dick tonight, but he's in the worst car on the grid. It may rain, and it may rain horribly, and he's never been here. His literal experience with this track is in the F1 video game. So that should be interesting. And while that certainly does give you track knowledge as far as where the turns are, it's not the same as driving an F1 car, I'm sure. So as I mentioned earlier, Danny Rick's still out. I wish he was back. This sucks, but and I'm sure the conspiracy theorists are going to be going crazy that maybe Danny didn't break his hand. Maybe this was his bow out to let Lawson have that seat. So if that talk's not out there, it sure will be now. So please don't tear me up on that one there, Mikey. I'm sorry. I love Danny Rick. Carlos Sainz, coming off a absolute ass-kicking drive at Monza, is super confident this weekend. And I don't know if that's good or bad for us as Tifosi. I think he can finish top 5 on this circuit. He also likes street circuits. Is it maybe a little too hyped up? Probably. But, I know the team principals like that. They want those guys that can get in there and make the tough call and the risky move and hopefully pull it out. So we'll see what Carlos is able to do this weekend. I'd like to see Ferrari. I really would like to see Ferrari, second, third place, one or the other. So, Checo. So me and a lot of my friends are playing F1 Play this year, and just I think you make like 8 predictions per week, and we've all been doing not great. I think the highest one week was a 6 out of 10. I think that was you, Mikey. You might have been 5 or 6. And if it was higher than that, then I'm sorry. But mostly on average, we're averaging, about 3 out of 8 or 3 out of 10 predictions. And it asks you, who's going to be on the podium, and, which driver out of the midfield is going to be the highest finisher, and which driver out of the back of the field is going to be the highest finisher, stuff like that. Really simple questions. really difficult to answer because on any given Sunday it could go any way. But I picked Checo this week on my podium, and I picked him in the first spot. Yeah, 3 in on that game. 3 is definitely a good score. It seems to be at least good for P2 in that group. But Checo is excellent on street circuits, and I don't know if you've watched him at Baku, and I know Mexico's not a street circuit, but it plays out like a street circuit, and of course it's his home track too, so that helps. But I think he can take this week, and as we get further into the show, especially once we get to root from the paddock, I think you'll see where my headspace is at, and it might be completely off, and a lot of times it is. But I think he could win this race, and that would close down Max's record on wins in a row. Thank God. And so like I said, I think he can pull this one out, and I don't want to get into too much of it right now. But anyway, the other big piece of that is right behind this is Max hasn't won here. And in fact, he's not that great here. Now, is he beyond great this year? Yes, absolutely. Untouchable this year, but he has a tough time at Singapore. And plus, going into the weekend, now he might be just blowing smoke up everybody's ass, but he's saying it's going to be a tougher weekend. And I think a lot of that's probably just pressure. So, he's young, obviously uber talented. Obviously, he's won 10 races in a row and 15 of the last 16. But he's not good here. It may rain. I don't think he's the best wet weather driver anyway. You got some other cars here that'll be competitive. This circuit really depends on where you qualify. So, and he's already shown that he could lose out on the pole. We've seen that. If you know anything about Singapore and the slingshot chicane, it's literally turns 1 and 2 at Singapore, and they have tons of wipeouts there. Sometimes right at the beginning of the race. So it could get crazy. If you have F1 TV, go back and watch, pull up any of the races between 18 and 22, and you'll see some nasty, nasty stuff on that first chicane. Plus, I think you got some cars bringing some upgrade packages this week that could, potentially at least piss him off, at least annoy him to the point where he could probably make a mistake. So, it's one of those things where and I know we say this, maybe not every week, but I know I say this not every week, but, depending on what circuit we're on. But this is one of those tracks where anything can happen. I mean, he could wipe out on turn 1 or get wiped out on turn 1, and that'd be it. I mean, that'll be the end of it, at least of the streak. I mean, he's obviously going to win the championship. Plus, Red Bull could clinch the Constructors' Championship this weekend. So, yeah, absolutely. This is probably one of the most poignant comments tonight so far. You definitely got to survive the start at Singapore. You've also got to survive the tight squeeze in Sector 2 because it gets really cramped on some really super kind of high-speed turns. Yeah, they've loosened up the end of the circuit, but that middle is still nasty. So, and if it's raining, like I said, it's going to be ugly. There's just no way around it. And so when you got rain spray and you're driving at night with lights in your face, yeah, it could get nasty quick. So, should be an interesting race. If you can get your all's asses out of bed on Sunday morning early, make sure you watch this one. Okay, predictions. I'll take predictions in the comments section too if you guys want to do your own predictions. But so I'm going to take Checo, and then I'm really torn on P2. I put Max, but I kind of want to go Hamilton / Alonso, and I realize that's two separate people. I understand that, but it could go either way with those two. I think it'll be one or the other. So I'm looking at Checo, Hamilton, Alonso, and then Max after having to play catch up because of something that happens to him. So that's where I think this is going to go. So I'm looking forward to see what you guys think. Definitely hit me up on Twitter at jneil729 or hit me up on here and let me know what your all's predictions are. So, ripped from the paddock. Not that crazy this week. Pretty simple stuff. Articles from the F1 website. Haven't read them. Don't know what they say. We're just going to take a stab in the dark on them. But the first one, Red Bull hold the edge, but could this be the weekend their incredible winning run ends? And, I think I've kind of already covered this. Yeah, this is one of those. This is one of the nice. Wow, just not even going to call it until you win the poll this week. I do think it could end this weekend. I think there's any number of drivers that can make that happen. Some for good and some not so good. I'm worried about some of our newbies out there this weekend. I'm worried about some of our super frustrated drivers in the midfield that are just constantly in traffic. I always worry about Ferrari because it's like, whatever, man, figure it out. Last week was great, but let's hope they can be consistent. So, yeah, I think their winning run could end. So it really, really is going to come down to Max and his situational awareness on the circuit this weekend. Second one, it cannot be underestimated. Alonso gives his verdict on potential F1 comeback for Sebastian Vettel. Well, as an old F1 fan, I have to tell you, I would be excited to see Vettel come back. He's a 4-time world champ with Red Bull. He's a no-time world champ with Ferrari. Finished up at Aston Martin, gave his seat to Alonso. And now he's been sitting at home all year, although technically not sitting at home. He's participated in a lot of motorsports events. But, sitting at home watching a 42-year-old two-time world champ, Fernando Alonso, do super well in the car that he drove last year. And not only do super well, I think he's had 8 podiums. So really incredible year for Alonso. And, and Alonso and Vettel are good friends, and him and Hamilton both. And, I think it's one of those things where I'm sure they talk. So can Vettel come back? Yes. Can he be effective? Yes. But it is seriously going to come down to what car he would land in, which, begs the question, what freaking car is he going to be in? Because there's not a car for him right now. I doubt he goes to Williams if they decide to offload Logan Sargent. So, that's a thing. None of the other teams are looking to offload anybody. So it would be a shocker to be sure, but I'm not doubting that he couldn't come back. And, of course, he brings the weight of walks in the front door and says, hey, 4-time champ, Seb Vettel, here to race for you. What do you got? So I think they make room for him, but I think it's all blown smoke right now. I'd like to see what happens later as we get towards the end of the season. And last but not least, on the rip from the paddock, Verstappen expects tough Singapore weekend, which I kind of brought that up earlier. And this, speaking of blowing smoke, I really believe that's what he's doing here. I think he's just trying to set the press and the fans up for, him winning by 15 or 20 seconds again. So do I want to see that? No. I would like to see Checo or Alonso, Hamilton, or one of the Ferrari guys on the top step. But I don't know. It's one of those things where maybe he's being legit. Maybe he thinks it's going to be a tough weekend. So I know it's not going to be the car, and I know it's not going to be the team. So if it's on anybody, it's definitely going to be him for sure. So that being said, guys, that is it for Formula One. Make sure you get up this weekend and watch it either on ESPN or F1 TV. But if you have the option of watching on F1 TV, do it. It'll be definite entertainment for you. So, oddly enough, we're moving on to my favorite race from this past weekend, which we didn't have an F1 race, so got lucky there. But folks, did you watch the Indianapolis cars, the Indy cars this past weekend? If you did not see it, and it was on Peacock, that's where I watched it, but there's a great 20-minute, 15 to 20-minute video on YouTube that kind of sums it up. It was their last race of the year. Alex Palou has already won the championship. It was called the Grand Prix of Monterey, but let's call it what it was. It was the NTT Indy Car Demolition Derby of Laguna Seca, because these guys hit every single thing on the track. The only thing they didn't hit was the hot dog stand, and that's because Laguna Seca does not have a fucking hot dog stand. That's the only reason they didn't hit it. At first, I lost count. Thank you. We must have been thinking it at the exact same time. I lost count at 14, so I went back and watched it for a third time. And it turns out there were 16 on track accidents in this race. One race, 16. I don't know if that's a record or what, but man, that was insane. It was like it felt like every 3-4 laps, sometimes twice in the same lap. And it was nuts. Let's just go through a recap for you. And guys, when I'm talking about these wrecks, I'm not talking about people like Stingray Robb and, you know, Joe Snuffy and Mark Not So Bright out there. These aren't people you've never heard of. These are Newgarden and Erickson and Ferrucci and Dixon, all these guys that if you're an IndyCar fan, you know who these people are, and they're the ones having these wrecks. Now, the other weird part is I'm a big fan of, not necessarily a big fan of him, but his career, just because it's kind of funny. But Romain Grosjean, former F1 driver, not very good at F1, goes to IndyCar, starts doing really well. This year, though, towards the middle of the year, starts doing horrible again, starts looking like his old self from F1, wrecking all the time, blah, 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 this and that, whatever. This weekend, we have a race that has 16 different on-track incidents. He's not involved in any of them. And not only that, at one point, he was P1 leading the race and pretty late in the race. If he didn't have to pit with and I think it was like 17 to go or 12 to go or whatever, he could have won this thing. So it almost stands to reason that the only way Romain Grosjean gets through a race without incident is if everybody else has one. So he's kind of an albatross, I guess, to the other drivers. But so we'll start out right at the beginning of the race. There was an incident. I mean, literally on lap one, coming down the hill into the first turn. But once we got back underway, and about lap 7 or so, your top three were Rosenquist, who was lights out driving that car off the road, but Alex Palou was in 2, Will Power 3rd. Palou, obviously already the world champ, has that clinched. Romain Grosjean at this point was in 7th position. At lap 36, it was Palou, Pato Award, and Christian Lungard, another F1 hopeful, leading the race. Palou was. So Palou's doing really good here. At the time, Romain Grosjean was in 4th place. And I want to tell you, he was on a mission. I don't know if you saw that part of the race where midpoint of the race or whatever. He's doing overtakes that he wouldn't have even attempted in F1. And even if he had, he would have taken out 2 or 3 drivers at a time. By lap 58, it's Alex Palou, Canapino, and Ferrucci. And Romain Grosjean had just pitted, and now he's in 13th, fighting his way back up. That was lap 58. By lap 63, pit stops are complete. Award, Armstrong, and Dixon are in the top 3, and Romain Grosjean's in 3rd. So made up 10 spots. 22 to go. This is what it was. 22 to go. Grosjean's in P1. And Dixon, who would eventually go on so with 22 to go, eventually all right, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. Every now and then I get some lag. So anyway, it was a really cool race. Go back and watch it. It was their last race of the year. And they went out in style. I mean, if you're somebody that likes an eventful race that's definitely not boring, these guys, it was like, I tell you what's funny is it didn't remind me of a race at all. It reminded me of one of the old school WWE Royal Rumbles where, every 2 or 3 minutes they call somebody in and you got to throw them over the top rope. That's what it looked like. Every time people got to the front, it was like, let's kick them out of the ring. So really cool race. Probably one of my favorite ones to watch this year, besides the 500. But really interesting. So moving on to the other big race this weekend. As we know, NASCAR is in the second race of their playoffs at Kansas this past weekend. Also a very good race. If you remember last week's show, I said some of the people to look out for. One of the people to look out for was Reddick, um, and we'll talk about it. But he had a really really good race. So anyway, we were at the. This was the Bethel Lou stole my casserole dish 400 at Kansas Speedway. Bell, Larson, and Truex lead them out on stage one. And I just want to be clear so I don't have to say it again for the rest of this footage or, replay, recap. Kyle Larson was awesome this weekend. Had some trouble in stage three, and I think, that's what ultimately cost him. But his name was in it the whole time. And, that's what you look for, I think, a lot of times when you're watching, especially NASCAR, where you got a lot of pack racing. Kansas was unique because they were all over the track. But Larson was always there. Martin Truex had a shit car. Hit the wall, suspension failure. I think he tried to come back at some point, but he ended up being out. The unofficial official, at least remember Chad? Yeah, he hit the unofficial official driver of the fuel pod, Ross Chastain. He was top 5. It felt like he was top 5 for 90% of that race. So did a good job. It was clean. He was racing hard, but he wasn't banging into people. So very untypical of him or atypical of him. Early on in the race, and I already brought this up, but Reddick, Bubba Wallace looked super strong, and there was a lot of people thinking he was the weak link, securing that last playoff spot. But at a track like Kansas where it's so slick and there was so much wall contact, again, I lost count with how many drivers were in the wall. At some point, a pit guy just spontaneously combusted into fire. That was in Byron's pit crew. I don't know if you saw the race, but he was getting done. They were taking the car off the jack, and it sparked and caught the fuel guy on fire. And I don't know who the play-by-play guy was calling. It's like, oh, his arm's on fire. Oh, his left quad is on fire. Now his foot is on fire. Okay, we get it. Guy's on fire. Let's put the guy out. Okay. So anyway, Byron gets back on the track, but Larson wins stage one with Chris Bell and Bubba Wallace bringing up 2 and 3. We start stage 2. Larson, Chase Elliott, and Bubba Wallace are out front with Reddick back there. Chastain was still P5. Eventually, and it was like it was out of nowhere. Like you haven't heard his name at all today at this point. And then Denny Hamlin enters the chat, P6, right? He's coming out of nowhere. I mean, I assume it's at some point he was P7, 8 as well, but I felt like I didn't see anything until he was P6. So I'm like, oh, shit, Hamlin's up there. And there was so many people up there that Hamlin is pissed off or is pissed off by. So it was one of those things where I was just worried about a super huge, nasty accident, which never happened, never materialized. Eventually, Bubba Wallace gets a flattened right rear tire, and wait for it. I brought this up last week. Wait for it. Toe link. Broken toe link. I knew I was going to hear it. So if you have a drink in front of you right now, toe link drink. This won't be the first one. Just saying. So Bubba Wallace flattens his right tire. And, this really puts him, after just talking about how strong he was, securing his playoff spot, doing pretty well last week, did half of this race great, blows that tire. I think he loses 15 playoff points at that point. Tyler Reddick goes on an absolute effing tear and runs it up to P2. Then we had the incident where I missed this part, but somehow Cindric pissed McDowell off. And then, so McDowell let him know it, and he spun him out, and they ended up T-boning each other. Wow, that didn't sound good at all. Anyway, go ahead, Rob. Put it up there. Scissor. Anyway, so McDowell spins out Cindric, and that caused a little bit of a hassle there towards the end of stage 2. And at this point, we've got Chase Elliott and Blaney and Harvick are up there with 29 to go in stage 2. And then before it was all said and done, again, like Hamlin, Keselowski comes out of nowhere and he beats Hamlin for the stage 2 win after almost neither one of them being anywhere near that at the beginning. Wow, Diddy, I hadn't looked at this for. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even Ferrari can keep from catching shit on fire. We don't know. This week hasn't happened yet. Anyway, moving into stage 3 for this second playoff race for NASCAR. So, coming out in stage 3, we got Keselowski, Hamlin. Keselowski, sorry, you guys are cracking me up tonight, which is odd. Normally, I just ignore you. Anyway, Keselowski, Hamlin, Reddick coming out in stage 3. We had the 8th caution of the night when Burton, wait for it, y'all know what I'm going to say, toe link, busted his toe link. Anyway, Tyler Reddick comes out of nowhere, wins this race. So next week is going to be Bristol under the lights. You got so many drivers on the bubble. Half of them, I don't even know who these guys are. But obviously Truex on the bubble after this week, especially I think he was down like 30 points after Darlington. Obviously down points. Bubba Wallace is going to be down points. So yeah, we got a lot of players. I think the bubble cutoff is at 25 points. So we'll see what happens. Should be an interesting race. It'll probably be Saturday night if I'm not mistaken. But that's where we are, folks. And those are your 3 big race series here on the Fuel Pod. But yeah, guys, that's all I got tonight. It's kind of a short night. We'll close it out around 40 minutes, it looks like. Make sure you watch the races this weekend. I have some hot laps or some reference laps, more like reference laps, not hot laps, for Singapore. If you're not familiar with that circuit and you're on the bubble about, hey, should I watch this race? It's definitely a fun one to watch. It's one of the more fun ones to watch. If I was speaking of NASCAR, I would say it's it's definitely a funner one to watch. I don't know what he's referencing Toyota and Gazoo Racing. Besides them being the absolute shit in rally car, man, they are the stuff in rally, especially after Greece this past weekend. So we still got a few more races in that season. But guys, that's all I got. Y'all hit me up on Twitter, JNeil729. Make sure you like and follow the show. We're on every Thursday. I am contemplating now that it seems like I'm the only one. I am contemplating moving it to an earlier time slot on this same day. But, let me know what you think. Reach out and let me know, and we'll see. If not, I'll just stay at 9, which is fine as well. Don't care one way or the other. I know we have some people that can only do it late, at least listen to it late, and I definitely want to support those folks that are supporting us. So thank you very much. You guys have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Get some racing in if you can. It's all over the place this week. So have a good night, and I'll catch you guys next week. Thank you very much.